Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me tonight I got Mac.
What's good?
Gio is unfortunately not able to join us today, but don't worry. On today's podcast, we are going to be reacting to the news of Jurgen Klopp's departure from Liverpool at the end of the season. We'll also review some of the recent FA Cup action, and we'll preview some of the upcoming Premier League games. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But let's get straight into our topics for today. Mac, since we last recorded, this news broke out Friday morning for us, and yeah, it's been a rough couple of days in between as a Liverpool fan, of course. So of course that's the news of Jurgen Klopp. He will be stepping away from Liverpool at the end of the season, and I think shockwaves went around the world of football because it's kind of unexpected at this point, considering how well Liverpool have been doing so far. There's a little bit of a rebrand of the team. He's going sort of through a transitional period where so far I guess you could say it is successful up to this point, and you think he'll be here for at least a couple more years. But of course he does come out in an interview say that he feels his energy is running low, and for himself he wants to take a break from obviously the grind that's been going on for almost 10 years. So from that right there, Mac, what were, I guess, your initial reactions from this news?
Obviously, sad to see. He's a great presence in the Premier League. He brings a lot of character. He brings a lot of attitude, and he's been the main catalyst, I would argue, as to the evolution of Liverpool to a team that they used to really be and competitive across all competitions. Because I think there is a clear. I know that you maybe were a fan of the Rodgers reign or certain times under Liverpool prior to Klopp, but this definitely feels like the most successful time period that they've had since I've been alive. So to see him take a look at stepping away obviously is sad, but my first question to be is the timing of it. Why now? Why not, for example, like win a trophy, sail away in the sunset potentially towards the end of the season and kind of release something? Then now it's more maybe putting a front-loaded pressure where maybe this is similarly to something in the NBA that we always compare it to is like The Last Dance, where it is the last ride for this team, this iteration under Klopp. Does that motivate his players? I don't necessarily see that. I'm not in the locker room every day, so who knows? But I think the timing of it for me is kind of interesting as to why he'll be able to come out now. And because again, what I thought would have been more of an ideal position, you let the ownership know. Now, of course, it gives them time to be able to scout, get in touch with other people behind the scenes to look for next season. But you're not kind of putting out in front of the media and having that interview. Maybe you get something he wanted to do individually so he can kind of get it off his chest because it's been kind of bugging him. That may be a reason. Again, for me, it gives. It's an answer to this question. When does Klopp leave? We know that it's going to be at the end of the season, but why now? As what are the impacts it's going to have on every other aspect of the football club, where they're very much on for the quadruple, right? As they currently are stated. So I don't know. Right. I'm curious. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was very intrigued by the timing of it as well. Literally in the middle of the season, though it feels like it's a little bit of there's been a little bit of a lull in between sort of the New Year's and then of course with a couple of cup competitions here and there. It's come out, of course, though, that he actually let the club know back in November. So I guess they've been trying to keep this under wraps for a little bit. But I think it just makes sense. I guess ultimately, I think this would have meant that this is Klopp's decision. It really much does sound like it was him that probably would have said, "Hey, I want to step away and keep it under wraps from the media until he is ready to do so." And I think that is mostly, I think maybe a compromise within the club and him, but I think that's ultimately kind of what Liverpool would have at least followed in terms of his instructions. And so I think that's part of it. But the other reason being is, yeah, just let the fans know what they can expect from now until the end of the season. It it is a blow, but I feel like it would have been much more in terms of speculation, a lot harsher if this was done at the end of the season. Whereas now, of course, like you said, there's probably plans in motion. People are being talked to. Candidates are being brought up, which we can talk about briefly after this. But as well, on for the quad, this could be, and a lot of people are talking about it, a little bit of a boost for the Liverpool team, saying that this is going to be the last season Klopp is in charge. So why not go out there and try to do the most they can and win some, if not all, of the trophies available for him in his last year. So I think in the short term, that is ultimately a not the worst decision that was made to release this information now. And I think that does, short term wise, give them a little bit of a boost. Players have been brought on in terms of with injuries happening to the team. He's brought on some more of the youth players through, so that is a good sign in terms of the club for now. And I think with the succession plan that's been planned and the players that he's brought in for the last couple of transfer windows, it just means that still, even though he is going to be leaving, he is leaving the club at, I would argue, a very, very good position to move forward. What do you think, though, Mac, this means for Liverpool for short term, medium term, long term?
Short term, obviously, it's where this does heap pressure on the current crop of players. Does this put any pressure on the management? They have a couple days left in the transfer window. The ownership to be able to maybe one last hurrah for him. Maybe is that what he's looking? Could that be a play here to be able to kind of heap some pressure there? Who knows? Don't know. I think the short term is very interesting. I think that, of course, with the injury to Mohamed Salah, you're looking at it maybe in a revigoration of, okay, we still need to be able to do this. Long term, how this can impact, of course, is we're looking at new management. And to jump right into the conversation, the betting odds favorite right now is for Xabi Alonso, which I think that's an interesting fit. He's really only had just over a year in club management, done fantastically well. Of course, might be going on to win the Bundesliga for this year. So does he leave to go for Liverpool now? Him being a former club legend, he immediately would be embraced by the fans versus like even when Klopp first came, there was definitely questions, there was apprehension because he wasn't really one of their own in some ways. So whereas Xabi Alonso will have that kind of buy-in from fans day 0-1 without a shadow of a doubt. But could there not be more of a contrast of footballing styles? So how much of an overhaul does that mean? Does that mean now Mohamed Salah is gone? Does that mean now that there's moving on from the Trent in right back position? Because that is Trent's a very different defender for Liverpool under Klopp than what right now, for example, Frimpong is doing for Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga under Xabi Alonso. So it opens so many questions if he's the replacement, and he's already been asked about it, and his answer was such a non-answer. It's like, hey, how do you feel about that job? He's like, meh, didn't say yes, didn't say no, which majority of managers at that time would say, no, not any talks, I'm focused on the season, done, right? He did not shut up shop whatsoever. And if he's not I don't feel like there isn't, I would say, a natural guy like Klopp with maybe his personality, his track record available. So that's really where the conference, if it's not Xabi Alonso, which would be a huge split of play style from what Liverpool do then to now, from now to then, sorry. If it's not him, who is it? And then from there, even then, there's still those questions because I don't think there's someone that does what he does at this level or even systematically close to his level where you can kind of have an easier transition. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get that for sure because it really begs the question what type of profile of manager they're looking for. Of course, since Jurgen Klopp has come into Liverpool, they've had everything's gone exactly to his plan in terms of his play style. Players recruitment has been sort of to help the play style and that profile player that he's looking for. Whereas, is this sort of, and we're gonna probably speculate this throughout the rest of the year into next season. Are Liverpool going to move away from this type of model that's been really players that fit that system and will thrive through being part of the system, or will they go for, I know a couple people have been mentioning more and more star names, quote unquote, with now Liverpool cementing themselves over the last couple of years as one of the top teams in the world. They do have that pull. They likely will finish in Champions League, so they can still go for that and then switch maybe the focus of managers that will bring players through rather than rather than bring players through and fit them to the system, that to maybe a type of manager like your Ancelotti's, your Zidane's, where they just manage a high performing group of players. So that begs the question. I'm not sure what that will mean in the coming years or year or so, or a couple of years coming. But I don't know. What do you think would be the move there, Mac?
I think no matter what, if you take a step back, and a lot of the credit deserves to go to Klopp, a lot of the credit does go to Klopp. But if you take a step back and look at what he brought in, where he, I would argue, has never been kind of the driving thrust of their transfers. And I think that's what been their major success since he's come in. For example, one of the most famous one is where when he came in, he didn't want Mohamed Salah. He wanted Julian Brandt. And he was overrode by ownership. They signed Mohamed Salah, and history has been written. So you have a tendency, I feel like, to trust the ownership and kind of the director's approach. Klopp's, what he's done in his role is fantastic. So I feel like even though he's integral, he's definitely the face of Liverpool. It's not going to be as, I would argue, of a dramatic a transition as the Ferguson era for Manchester United, where there is such a clear delineation of approach, because Ferguson was United. He controlled every aspect of it, versus Klopp is very much the kind of the face of Liverpool, but I wouldn't say that he is the one person that drives its success. It's kind of a collective, more of a collective there. So I think the transition should be a little bit smoother, but how they do it, to what approach they do it, I think is very interesting. If you're looking at the betting odds favorites, and of course, I know this fits right nicely for you, right?
Piqued my interest.
If you go down in terms of the top five, I think your favorite one is in more of a short term, because I'm always, as you know, I'm always of the theory it's impossible to replace the guy. You want to replace the guy that failed trying to replace the guy, right? That's the goal. You want to replace David Moyes. You don't want to be David Moyes, right?
Right.
So even though Xabi Alonso I think is good, I would rather have a lame duck sitter just to be able to cook next season, have a reset, then bring him in with low expectations, and then you're solid. But the betting odds here is, like I said, were if you go in order for the top five: Xabi Alonso, Roberto De Zerbi, Pep Lingers, which I think is Klopp's number 2, Ruben Amorim, which is the Sporting manager, I think, currently. Okay. And then, of course, 5th is Postecoglou, because he is a Liverpool fan, if you didn't know. Ooh. And that's one of the big talking points when he came into Spurs, and why his connection to potentially go to Man United. Not happening, because if any club he's going to and leave Spurs, again, early days, he just got the Spurs, but he is a Liverpool fan. Okay, so overall, those are the top 5. So again, I think all those names open up a lot of interest, a lot of different avenues, and all of them, I would argue, are a dramatic switch from Klopp. That's why I said earlier that there is no junior Klopp that they can do, other than, of course, is probably his assistant, which I don't think that's the bigger name that maybe that's something Liverpool fans are hoping for, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's going to be interesting to see what.
Who do you want? Who do you want as a Liverpool fan? What, in your ideal situation, how does this work out?
Yeah,
early days. It's a long time to go. So who knows? But what are your thoughts?
It's gotta be. It probably will be Xabi Alonso if it was my choice, just because of his pedigree. He knows the club, and likely he will be given more time than I think any of the other managers that you've listed. And as well, probably in terms of style, it is a little bit different, but he can probably rejig the players that he has at his disposal to sort of fit that style that he's been deploying at Leverkusen. So that's probably the easy choice, but it could be any of those that you did mention. I don't think Postecoglou, I think he's the furthest from actually being the new Liverpool manager, but that's interesting to note as well. That's my answer. But I guess briefly before we move on from this, what do we think will happen with Jurgen Klopp? I know that you had a specific answer for that. I think you do. But for myself, I think he might take a little bit of a break, and then we might see him in potentially some international football in that stage. But what do you think, Mac?
I think he's done. I think he's retired. I think he's cooked. Not, that's not fair. That's not cooked. He said, even in a statement, is he's out of energy. He doesn't have any kind of gas in the chamber. He needs to be able to refuel. He's not in management years, he's not a Roy Hodgson, of course, where he may need to retire. But it feels like he's the type of guy, at least in my opinion, where if he's not going to be able to give his all to a job, he doesn't want the job. So I think maybe the international route, sure, where maybe he doesn't have to do as much. But is that necessarily wants? Does that cut back on terms of the culture that you can set, where you're spending majority of the time with players? That might be a little bit difficult. Again, it's tough to know. I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about an extended break where maybe he takes 2 to 3 years off before we see it. So it's hard to kind of predict where he may land. Or maybe does he even go back to Germany and try to coach Dortmund again? Something like that. Right. I wouldn't be surprised. But I think it would be a far-fetched idea to expect him in football or to be managing in football over the course of, let's say, the next 18 months. I don't think it's at the beginning of next season. And I think all of next season, he's probably out of the picture too. If he's going to come back, it only starts then to make sense the season afterwards. However, this is where I think could be very fun.
Okay.
I'm let's say Jim Ratcliffe, the new owner of Manchester United. I'm offering the most lavish Saudi Arabian salary I can offer to Klopp in like a 6 months time. And I want every report linked to it no matter what. I want everyone to know. Do you know what I mean? Just even though I know it's not going to be, he's going to get rejected, even though I know it's not going to go through, I want every reporter to know that I've made this offer. So every Manchester United fans be like, turns their head a little bit like, this is the change we're making. This is the approach we're on. We're being aggressive with all big targets. This is beautiful. That's what I would want to see. And they'll just like throw a little bit of chaos. Klopp would never do it, but at least we don't think he would do it, but I don't think he would ever do it. But I think it would be a good story to kick off more of a Manchester United rejig under Ineos and Jim Ratcliffe.
And even if it doesn't happen for Man U and or Klopp, the worst thing that can happen is create some uncertainty in the Liverpool camp. So that's for Man U fans exactly what they want. All the media flooded with those type of news. Liverpool insiders questioning themselves, questioning Klopp, chaos ensuing. That would be ultimately, I think, the goal for Man U. But a lot to speculate, and I got a lot of the season left, so we'll definitely touch on that topic more. We'll just quickly, before we take a break, cover some of the FA Cup matches that took place. The first one, Man City 1, Spurs 0. This match here, interesting one, in the sense that Man City played their game, Spurs played the game. Ultimately, I would say it, on the balance of play, possession, chances, Man City did edge it. I think the goal that they conceded was a little bit of an iffy one. It could be argued that there was a foul, I believe, on Ruben Dias, on Macario, but ultimately, Nathan Ake's goal puts Man City through, and I think deservedly so. What are your takes on this game, Mac?
Absolutely, I completely agree. Again, it felt like more of a Tottenham. They did not lack effort. I just felt like they lacked a little bit of quality in the final third, and that's going to be interesting to see when, with Son being gone, does the kind of the force of Brennan Johnson, Kulusevski, Timo Werner, Richarlison do enough? At least I don't maybe until James Maddison's back in the picture, but do they do enough to be able to kind of add a little bit more of offensive threat to the Spurs team to kind of really tackle those higher echelon, top of the table types of teams? And in this game, just wasn't enough, where that final pass was missing, making the correct one wasn't a little bit there. It's early days for Timo Werner there, so don't want to be too harsh on him. But collectively, those four, they need to be up at a higher level if Spurs are going to compete with a team like Man City. Whereas Man City, again, as we expected, they do what they do. They do what they need to be able to do in games. They kept possession and created enough chances. I thought that the Oscar Bob one, initially on first call, I thought that was onside, but it, of course, was off. But that was a great save initially by Vicario. That was a phenomenal save. Again, showing his worth. I do want to be able to spend just a quick minute here on that situation, which is happening more and more often as a trend in world football, where that corner kick is being slammed at that near post with so many bodies around a goalkeeper, and the argument of them, should the goalkeeper be protected? They're just another player. And it's such a trend where I personally don't enjoy it as much, because everyone has that same tactic. It's more, and again, to use the comparison as always to basketball, where everyone wants to be able to go to the rim or shoot threes. Every corner kick is, let's slam it near post and put 16 bodies on the goalkeeper. We can kind of mess them up a little bit, then we'll be able to get an easier chance. Like the biggest culprits that I always see is, like, for example, like Ben White for Arsenal. He's always just in a goalkeeper's jersey. And there's always like that one little dickhead that's their job is just to piss off the goalkeeper on every team. I don't like it. it's too monotonous. It's too much the same. I miss like a short corner routine. Oh, let's hit the far post or something different. I understand the stats are the stats, and that's going to create a lot of chaos, and it puts the referee in a position to make a call. But for me, it seems a little cheap, and I don't enjoy seeing it as much. Again, that's my thought. I wish that there was maybe more of a law protecting the goalkeeper. Maybe that's just me being part of the goalkeepers union at one point.
Right.
That's saying, "Hey,
Right.
help my brother out." But I think there's some in some ways they get it horrendously wrong. The most famous one, of course, with not the most famous one. One of the most famous was Onana, first game of the season, literally knocking somebody out, but no pen there. But for those corner kicks, I think that there should be like a radius around a goalkeeper where they get the capability of movement, you know? And I think that's the issue where there's the blocking, which is not, there is no blocking law. It's just people are allowed to block, but in the rule book, you're not allowed to do that. So, but it's just given as an acceptance, right? So maybe if that was more of a focus, those situations would happen. But again, I don't like to see it. Fair enough that the goal is given, but maybe that's something in the future as a rule that could be implemented to fix these situations.
I hear where you're coming from, but like you said as well, the reason being it's probably just to cause chaos. You put an extra body there, keeper's not able to really claim his area, or he has to really be a very assertive keeper to do so. And then chaos ensues. Chances get created from there. Of course, people being out of place and people being blocked, deflections, all of that. Which ultimately, chaos is sort of what the outcome would be, what the attacking team wants. And that's probably why they do it. Speaking of chaos, there's another game that we're going to cover now. Man United 4, Newport County 2. I would say a chaotic game in the sense that there were 6 goals. And even though Man U looked like this is probably something that they could walk away easily with, a lot of different goal scorers, it wasn't as easy for them in this game, Max. So let me hear your thoughts from this result.
Firstly, a win is a win. Getting a win for Manchester United right now cannot be the kind of taken without anything. They need every kind of advantage they get, and staying alive a little bit further in a cup competition is absolutely vital. But they are so fortunate that they played such a poor team. Newport, I think, are 16th in League 2. So that's the 4th division in English football. So they're not a great team. And to, in some ways, kind of scrape by your teeth, to be able to get by them, relying on Anthony to get a goal and an assist in the same game. He's never got one of those so far this year. So the fact that he got 2 of them in the same game, phenomenal. This is big news. So
he's back.
Again, he's back. He's Manchester United's back, baby. That's the takeaway that we can get from here. But I think the good part, at least as if we're going to be a little bit more positive for Manchester United, is where there was more attacking intent in the final third. It seemed like there was a little bit better decision making. The only glaring one, which generally happen like 4, 5, 6 times a game, where you'll see someone in a horrible position try to take a poor angle shot instead try to play it across. It seems like the message is getting across where some of those balls are coming through. I think that was a missing feature. The only one in this game really that screams out to me was in Garnacho was down on the left-hand side. At one point when he was broken through by Martinez, hits the top of the post, but of course Bruno Fernandes and Højlund are just wide open for a tap in, and he just doesn't even, he pretends they don't exist, which is it a recent trend of Garnacho? Yes, but it seems like there is improvement there, which is nice, but not too many takeaways because you played such a horrible team. Other than, yes, you make it to the next round, you're still in the cup competition, you can salvage something from your season still with something like this.
Yeah, exactly. And so on to the next round, man, you go. The other teams involved will be Bournemouth, who are facing Leicester City, Blackburn Rovers, Newcastle is the other match, Luton versus Man City, Wolves versus Brighton, and then Maidstone United, Liverpool, and like mentioned, Manchester United are waiting to see some of the other results that will take place, I believe, next week. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. But let's take a quick break here, boys, and then we'll be back covering some more Premier League action. So stay with us. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast today, now discussing some Premier League action taking place this week. The first game we're going to preview is Aston Villa versus Newcastle. This one will be an interesting one. 2 previous results. Villa tied Chelsea 0-0, and Newcastle beat Fulham 2-0. So I think that's from the FA Cup matches, if I'm not mistaken, Max. So both teams will be looking, of course, going into this game to get a positive result. They've both been, well, definitely Aston Villa has been overachieving so far this season. Newcastle, you can say, are underachieving. So, quick question right off the bat there. Who do you think needs this win more, and what do you think will happen in this game, Mac?
Absolutely, Newcastle need this win more. There's no shadow of a doubt. Last time that these two teams played each other was the opening game of the season. Of course, Newcastle absolutely shellacking Aston Villa 5-1. Very different teams at that point, where Newcastle were just starting their season, coming up a high of last year. Aston Villa were still trying to figure out the reset of how they want to be able to adapt from their success from last year and how teams can adjust to them. I think it'll be very interesting because I would argue one of the few teams in this league that can do very well against a high line with wingers with pace, with Anthony Gordon, Almiron, an intelligent striker who's very smart with his movement with Isak. I think Newcastle have the tools in their tool belt to be able to take advantage of a Villa defensive system, as well as are physically strong enough to be able to deal with the physicality that Aston Villa brings, and pace that they bring on the other side. We may see, when you talk about players like Diaby coming up against a player like Dan Burn, I know generally speaking you'd favor one over the other, but those defenders for Newcastle on their day have played out of their head and have played above their stock, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a similar type of performance from them. I think, though, the interesting part with being it away at Villa is that they've won 16 of their last 17 home games. And keyword there is they've won those games. So even to get a point when you're going to play at Villa is a great result. And I think Newcastle right now, if they can scrape by that, I think that'll be good enough for them. Job will be done. And I think they can do it. Like I said, I think both teams will score. I definitely think that it's a little bit easier of a pathway for Newcastle, just given that the way that they can kind of expose that high line and with recent results. So again, overall, very fascinating game and one of the best midweek games for sure. So very excited to see what happens.
Yeah, a lot of things covered there, Mac. I'm just gonna bring it to a different topic in here, which is going to be key areas of the pitch to watch. You did mention both teams to score. I think that's a pretty good shout, but I'm going to bring it to the midfield between these two clubs. Newcastle's last Premier League game was against Man City. They played Lewis Miley, Bruno Guimaraes, and Sean Longstaff. I'm not sure if you've heard of the news. I'm pretty sure Joelinton is out for the rest of the season, and I'm very surprised Newcastle didn't. The move for Calvin Phillips, who, again, since we last sort of discussed on a podcast, has since joined West Ham for the remainder of the season. I'm surprised if Newcastle don't bring any reinforcements there because, first of all, their midfield has been decimated throughout the season. Lewis Miley playing big minutes as a teenager for Newcastle, which is not something that I think they would have wanted. Other reasons, of course, Tonali being out for the rest of the season as well. But like in any other game, I think it would be okay. But you're facing a Aston Villa team with a very experienced midfield. I think it's fair to say with Douglas Luiz, you have John McGinn, and you can even play Kamara or Tielemans, who, again, on their days, very capable and experienced midfielders in the Premier League. So it's going to be very hard in this game for, I think, Newcastle to go 50-50. Or go try to match them up in midfield and try to play their style. So it's, I think, going to be a lot of Aston Villa keeping possession of the ball, Newcastle hitting them on the break. And like you said, Isak, very capable. Anthony Gordon has had a great start to the season. So I'm very excited to see if he can cause problems with that high line that Aston Villa have. But McGinn, Watkins, Diaby, they have something to prove. They tied their last game 0-0 against it was Everton in the Premier League and then Chelsea in the FA Cup. So 2 games without goals scored. Watkins, if you're not putting up your goals, Ivan Toney's going to come for that backup striker position for England. So a lot of different topics that we can discuss there. Any specific matchups that stand out to you other than the ones that you mentioned, Mac, from this fixture?
I think you highlighting Anthony Gordon, I think, is huge. Again, same thing as I mentioned earlier. I think he will be the key to Newcastle's attack in this matchup because I think completely on the same page with you on the patterns of play that we'll see is that in all likelihood we're going to see a domination in midfield from Aston Villa against this Newcastle team. in terms of their recruitment, just to touch on that, I think it's because they're just in fear of everything that's happened with Nottingham Forest and Everton now. That they are going to be, if they spend more money, going to be out in terms of FFP and are going to be in a tough position there. So they're going to just stick with the fact that they're hamstringed. They just got the bad, unfortunate luck of the draw with injury, and the bad luck in terms of they finally got new ownership once these rules are taken seriously. So it's tough luck there. But in regards to back to this fixture, aside from that, I think you highlighting the Watkins piece is very interesting, where I think that midfield for Aston Villa, we, instead of just seeing dominating play, they need to be more on the front foot to be able to join into the attack. Where we have they're very cerebral, like a Douglas Luiz, a Yuri Tielemans on their day. They can dictate and control a game. But I think that extra run into the box, into when crashing in, is going to be the bigger piece. Generally, thus far this season, we've seen that as McGinn, where he's entered into the box. So I think he's going to be a vital player for them, because I think Watkins is going to have a tough time against these centre halves in Newcastle, because on their day, Botman is one of the best young centre backs in the Premier League and is a handful of itself. So I think as long as Watkins can distract those centre halves, keep them at bay, continuously kind of pick and probe by making small little cuts in behind to create more space for those midfielders, I think that will be the differentiator. Where do we see maybe 10, 15 times where when a cross is coming in, it's just not Watkins in the box. We have a second and third run coming in. And I think that would be the way for Aston Villa to be able to get ahead early and push Newcastle to kind of come out of their shell. Whereas the longer that Newcastle kind of keep it even, the more of a threat a player like Anthony Gordon or Isak or Almiron can be, because all of them have bundles of pace and are intelligent enough to be able to know when that moment comes, they need to be clinical in that moment. So that's how I see the game going, and the areas of the pitch I'm focusing on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, and great point on the Newcastle in terms of the reason why they've, I guess, been so quiet so far in the transfer window. But again, Joelinton being out for the rest of the season is a huge miss, because in this type of game where you're gonna not have the ball as much and you're gonna be required to be smart in sense of you want to break the game up when needed. Wink, wink there in terms of a tactical foul or a little bit of a gamesmanship there. Joelinton is sort of your guy to go to. So interesting, and we'll keep an eye out for that. Let's talk about now, Mac, Chelsea versus Liverpool, which is another match coming up. I think it's on Wednesday. This one is going to be interesting because it's going to be the same fixture for the EFL Cup final that takes place later this year. Liverpool did beat Norwich 5-2 in the FA Cup, and then Chelsea, again, just talked about it, with Aston Villa tied in the FA Cup in the last round. What do you think will be on the lookout for in this game, Mac?
I hate these two teams when they play against each other. I've seen it so many times. It's like
4-4.
No, because it's been mostly like 0-0 draws. The last couple cup competitions last year, like I just I just need to wash the taste of these two teams, because it seems like whenever Chelsea show up to play Liverpool don't want to play so well, and Chelsea be like, hey, points good enough, hey, we're playing Liverpool. So they're just boring. I don't like it. I'm tired of it. And for me, that was the worst outcome that could have happened from the semifinals in the EFL Cup, were these two teams to face each other. Because I'm done. I'm tired. I just want to wash my hands of them. Let's take a little bit of break. Let's see them play other teams. It might be a little bit more fun, right? That just feels like they're in a league of two at sometimes. But to go into this game, I think immediately after, of course, the Klopp news, you're going to come and see out where this is something where Liverpool are going to have stamped, signed, sealed, delivered. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 3-4 win, 4-0 win from Liverpool, given the fact that this could definitely light a fire under their asses of what they need to do to now, hey, we're not just playing for Klopp, we're playing for the next manager next year. We need to show up now to be able to make sure that we can secure our position, because if there is an overhaul done or a further transition done, a lot of pressure on these players, and that new job really starts today. And they need to be able to do that. And I think a team like Chelsea, even though they've been in a better, quote-unquote, run of form than they were in the beginning of the season, they're still not great. And they are definitely going to, I would say, not take this game as seriously, where I think we all know the best case for Chelsea this year is that they come out with at least one cup. They're in a foothold in a couple of them right now. one step away from winning one. So I think they may not take this game as seriously, considering they just came off of a result against Aston Villa and know they have to go back in and play them again. I think it's next week, if I remember correctly. So
Yeah.
it's very, very serious for them, where that this may be kind of a schedule loss where they're not going to really take it. In terms of, let's say, I'll be interested to see how you feel about this area of the pitch I'm looking at. Again, for Liverpool, because I think they need to come on attack, is the attack. I'm very interested to see how well a Darwin Núñez plays, how a Luis Diaz plays, and of course with Jota coming in and playing very well since the injuries to Mohamed Salah, and of course him going for the Africa Cup of Nations. I think those three players have to continue to find kind of a gelling, a maturity, kind of sort of a chemistry where in that final third they're going to consistently create, finish chances based off of the backs of the system that Klopp's put in them in, which I think highlights a lot of their strengths. So overall, I'm looking at those three players, and I'm looking at Chelsea's defense of who they'll generally put out there right now. If you look at a 1-1 matchup, I'm sorry, across the board, I think they lose every single one. There's a better quality player in every Liverpool position, especially across the defensive end for Chelsea, where I think Liverpool will have the advantage. So I expect goals from Liverpool, expect them early, and I expect them often.
Okay, of course, that sounds great to me. I do agree in the sense that the Liverpool offense has to click, and we did see, I guess, the positive for Liverpool over the weekend fixture against Norwich. Yeah, Jota on the score sheet, Nunez on the score sheet, and then I know Robertson was part of the squad. I'm not sure if he made it on, but Trent Alexander-Arnold made it back. Szoboszlai made it back, so that's going to be huge in terms of presence back for Liverpool. And that's going to be needed because Mohamed Salah, just reading out the reports now, has there's been confirmed that there is a hamstring problem, which will keep him out for at least 3 to 4 weeks if everything goes smoothly. So that's going to be vital in the coming weeks for those forward players to, again, gel and find a combination that will just keep them ticking until Salah comes back and ultimately, as we expect, return and I guess shoulder that responsibility to score goals for Liverpool. On the flip side, I'm not very confident in terms of Chelsea's scoring. They did score 6 against Middlesbrough, but no disrespect to Middlesbrough, that is not Premier League opposition. They failed to score against Aston Villa. And again, they are still without a recognized, I would say, striker to lead the line at this point. Last game out, they did start Cole Palmer, who I think was in the score sheet against Middlesbrough. But again, not really liking their chances compared to a defense of Liverpool that is not the best, but you have Van Dijk still playing at a high level. Probably Konate will be joining him, so not looking likely for Chelsea in terms of scoring. What I would like to see is the midfield battle. Again, bringing it back to the midfield, how these two compare. Szoboszlai did start. We probably will see McAllister and either someone like Curtis Jones or either Harvey Elliott, Gravenberch. One of those types of profiles. Whereas for Chelsea, you probably would want to see if their midfield of Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, and Gallagher, probably those three will start, can match up with them. And again, it's a question of, hey, we've spent so much money. In these big games, we kind of need you to perform to give us a chance. And I know we just mentioned Liverpool, Chelsea in terms of defense and offense, lacking that sort of lacking against a Liverpool team. Will their midfield sort of, compared to this Liverpool team who are relatively new, sort of outperform them and hopefully make it a closer game for them? So not sure if you have an insight on that, Mac, but yeah, that's I think another area on the pitch that we should probably watch out for. Any, I guess, other sort of matchups or anything from this game on your end, Mac?
Again, after this game and the EFL Cup final, I'm done with these two teams. I don't want to see them play again until next season, late into next season, please. Like, have it like the two last game of the seasons next year. I'm just done. I'm done. I'm over it. And again, they'll give more time for the new manager, probably for both teams, to be able to readjust their teams.
I'm interested to see if Chelsea will have any action for the rest of the transfer window. I'm not too sure I haven't seen too many reports linking them to too many players at this moment, but yeah, it closes fairly soon. So if there's anything that does need to happen, it probably will happen within the next little bit. Hopefully by the next time we
I'd be
chat.
surprised if anything. I'd be surprised. Honestly, as of right now, reports are going. I'd be surprised if anything does happen. I think everyone is so scared in terms of financial fair play. There's not enough money in the market. Players are overpriced. I highly doubt we'll see anything major. If they're deciding over £40 million, I'd be shocked. I think majority of what's going to happen has already happened. Unfortunately, I think for a lot of clubs they needed some replacements. But if something does happen, you and I will both be here to cover it and be very excited to do so.
Exactly. So, guys, this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email. We are at houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Thursday when we review some of the midweek action and also preview some of the upcoming Premier League games next weekend. Of course, a lot of Premier League action to cover, and so we'll definitely be on that for you. Thank you for joining us tonight, Mac.
Good night. Peace out.
And see you guys soon.